This will be a quick tutorial on making brushes in Photoshop. If I jump to Photoshop, I've got a page here that I've got open, and then I've got a few images that I'm going to turn into brushes. So I've got some rocks, a watercolor drawing of mountains, and then I've got some clouds. So I'm going to start with the watercolor mountains. The first thing I do is I need to get it into channels. As long as you make an image black and white, so if I turn this to grayscale, it would work as a brush, but I prefer using channels, and I'll show why. So if I go to the channels, sometimes I can find a nice contrasty image or one I like just by clicking on the channels and duplicating one of these rather than taking the overall color channel. So I'm going to do that here, and I'll take blue. Blue has nice shades in it, so I'll bring it down here and I'll just duplicate it. Even though it says blue, this is an alpha channel. It's made it an alpha channel because it's extra to those base ones. So I'll go Command L, bring in the levels, try and get the whites. You can see this kind of gridded line in the background, so I'll knock that off, bring up the blacks a bit, and then usually when I'm making brushes, I mess heavily with the middle slider. This case, I'm going to try and keep some of these subtle greys, darken it a bit, bring up the whites. I'll go with that. Now, all I do here is with the brush, I'm going to hit D to make sure my colors are pure black and white. The X key will keep swapping them around, so I'll swap it to white. I'll use the white square bracket or enlarge the brush. Left square bracket reduces it. At the moment it's a hard edge. I'll just soften it slightly, like take it to about 85. And I'll just paint the stuff out that I don't want. Now it looks like I might have a little bit of grey around here. I can always go Command I. Sometimes I can see it a little better. Doesn't look too bad actually. So I might just leave it. Once I have my mountains like this, I get any selection tool and I just draw around it. Make sure I give it a wide berth so I'm not cutting any corners. Go Edit, Define Brush Preset. I'll call it Mountain Range. Go OK. And there I have my brush. So I'm going to get rid of that one because I'll find now that it's saved in here, Mountain Range. And now I'm going to quickly do the same thing with the image of the clouds. Look for red, green, blue. The red's the one with the most contrast. So I can duplicate that, Command L, bring in the whites a bit, bring in the blacks, middle slider. In this case I'm going to darken it off a bit. and I'll go okay. So again, I'm coming in here to isolate areas and to try and make a brush of some kind. Now I'm gonna work on this area here. So I've got X, so I've got black brush. I don't want to use this mountain brush at the moment, so I'm going to take it back to something that's more regular. Again, I like the around 85. And I can take some of the stuff out. You can see here it's going to have a little bit of a soft edge, and it's going to be a bit funny through here as well. So the way I tidy this up when I'm using the channels is I go to dodge and burn. So usually it's on dodge, the lollipop, but in this case I put it on burn, and I only use burn on the shadows. I usually change the exposure down so I can build it up. And when I use it on this edge, you can see it kind of eats into the image. So I'm clicking, letting go, clicking again, and it defines the black a bit. I'll go back to my brush. Just to take out that little bit there, and now I'll come down and look at the other edge. This makes it a bit more realistic at the edges here. Command I, because I always want a black brush on white. And I'll do the same thing, define brush. I'll call this cloud range to go with the mountains. Go OK. And I'll go Command I, and I might work on this one around the top. Again, I'll start off with a basic brush. Get rid of this. Area around here. And let's see what happens when we darken the sun. So this brush is obviously a wee bit softer, so it's right down because we want to eat into it with the edges. Not so keen on this funny little bit on the bottom, so I'll just dodge that out. Bigger the brush, the more subtle these edges are going to be as they come in. Also, it's on a light exposure, so I can just run it across some of these areas. Command I. And we have another cloud brush. Define brush. Cloud range 2. Go OK. Now, if I jump back to my main blank page that I've got here, I've got black is a color, and I can start to select my brushes. So I had mountain range. Just reduce that brush down a bit, and I can use it like a stamp brush. So it'll stamp it with black. I can change the sizing. And so stamping it around. So this is just using it like a stamp. So again, I can come into this one. I can go cloud range. I can have it on white, and I can bring some misty clouds back into play here. I can change it to cloud range 2, and I can swap it to black. And bring in some kind of storm clouds coming across the top. Change it to white and stamp in some little clouds coming through the valley. All right, so I'll get rid of that, and we'll have a look at the rocks. I don't need that anymore. I've got 2 rocks here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the channels. Kind of looking at this mossy stuff on top of the rocks. None of that makes none of those channels seem all that great. It looks like the color channel is the best option, so I'll select that and I can copy or cut it. I'm going to copy it, go to channels, new, paste. Going to bump up the whites, blacks. So again, I'm looking at areas that I can make into a brush. In this case, I drop that middle slider right down. So I can come in here and start to look at areas that might make an interesting brush. And then just paint out the bits that I don't want. Again, using the dodge and burn tool if I want it. So I'll grab an area like this, might make quite a good rock. I'll leave the grey in that one a bit, and I'll come up to a funny area like this. Again, I can see a bit of grey through this one. That's fine. What I'll do is I'll go to dodge and burn. This time I'll go to dodge. It's always on highlights. The exposure and the softness of the brush are the important bits. I'll put the brush right down, and I'll put the exposure right down as well. Got it on about 17%. Maybe I'll pump it up a wee bit on 30 now. And it will just be taking the grey out of the inside of this brush a wee bit. Get rid of a funny couple little bits there. Command I. Still got time to go in and modify things at this stage if I want to. So I'll grab this, edit, define brush. It's good. And then I had this one down here that I think has still got a bit of grey in it, so I'll grab that one. So using a brush, if I draw with it, click and drag, it has a very kind of computer feel to it. Command Z. So it's the brush settings that we want to change. So this one, when you click on it, you get your brushes to choose from, the size and the angle and everything. This little folder here brings up the brush settings. Brushes, brush settings, and you'll see them over here as well in this menu. Brush settings. So the first thing I'm going to look at is I can look at this here. Here's our brush with that kind of computer feel. If I go shape dynamics, size jitter, going to change what the minimum diameter will be. The main one here is the angle jitter, and you can see it changing down here. It's rotating the angle of the brush as you draw with it. Roundness, how it's going to kind of glug up those edges a bit. You can see it becoming a bit coarser. Might leave that off at the moment, and you've got things here that will change the jitter a wee bit as well. I'll just switch them off for the time being. Now, if I click and let go and click, you can see what's happening. This is just me clicking once and moving. Changes the angle of the brush. So when you're painting with it, already you get something that doesn't have that kind of computer feel to it. Now we can enhance it even more. If we go scattering, if you watch the scatter, so watching this line here, we can push it apart. And this can help the brush look more organic as well. The count jitter, so kind of glugging it up a bit. Sorry, the count and the jitter, kind of the randomness of it a bit. Okay, so we can play with this stuff. Now, what I was looking at before is I can actually go back to my other file where I had the brush. I can have it on black. And I can edit the brush if I want by changing the size and clicking and eating into it. So you can change the dynamics of this brush by using the brush on itself. Command I. Make a new brush again. Rock 3. And again, I can go through and play around with doing those presets again. angle jitter. All of these things as well, like size jitter and everything, I can control it with pen pressure, the tilt of the Wacom tablet, all of these things. Let's make it a bit smaller. You can see what's happening. If I get a brush that I like, then I can come up here and I can go new brush preset. Give it a name, and it's got an option here that says it can either have this size, I can capture that size in the preset, or include the tool settings. So I'll go OK. So this simply means that it'll keep these settings when I pick the brush later on. Got all those kind of Wacom tablet things to change it with the opacity, tilt of the brush, and everything is going to give it even more kind of realism. All right, so if I come into my presets, this one is my okay, so if I come into my presets, this is my Cloud Range 2. I can do the jitter, get the angle, roundness if I want to change that. It all mess with these settings. The scattering, wee bit, can push it around. This one, so if I have a look at it, this is what it's going to print. So I've got this one, and I'm going to make it a new brush preset. I'm going to call this dual brush outer, include settings. Okay. Dual brush outer. I can come back to my presets, and what I'll do is I'll click dual brush. So this is my outer part here that is being used as a mask, and now I'm going to try and find the it becomes a really awkward actually to find the brushes, but if I double click Cloud Range 2, okay, I've got the Cloud Range brush. I can change with the, you can see the brush changing here if I change the size. The spacing. Scatter on both axes. And count. So doubling up on the brushes can have quite a massive effect. Transfer, we can work with the opacity, all of the stuff as well. Can be worked off pen pressure. The flow, you can see how it kind of eats into it a bit here. So giving a slightly softer brush, and there's all sorts of bits here where you can kind of add in a bit of noise. You can see the speckle coming through, build up. I'll switch noise off. Just a whole variety of things that you can play with here. Wet edges, trying to give it a slightly more painterly feel. It has a kind of gluggy build up along the edge, like watercolor. So some of them are just kind of on and off options. Texture, I'll switch off wet edges for this. At the moment it's got basic textures in here. You can add in your own textures. It's a little bit hard to see that coming through, the brightness and the contrast, height. You can start to see the texture coming through now when you bring the depth down a bit. You can see it having much more of an effect. Depth jitter. Kind of endless, but from coming off an image, we've got quite a textural looking brush now. And again, if I want to use this, I can make it a new brush preset. Go OK. And if I pick a different brush, paint, I should be able to come in here. This is essentially the same brush, but now the quality of it, when you compare those two together, completely different. So it's keeping that preset